Just a few days ago, the news cycle presented a rare opportunity for the politically savvy politician, the kind of opportunity that only comes around once a year. The opportunity that is the Friday between Christmas and New Year's, the mother of all Friday news dumps, right? If you are a political leader and you are looking to bury an unpleasant bit of business where nobody's going to notice it, there is probably no single better specific day to do it than on the Friday between Christmas and New Year's. If you are Governor Bob McDonnell of Virginia, for instance, what better day to sign off on a measure designed to shut down the majority of your state's abortion clinics? Good timing, Governor Ultrasound. The Richmond Times-Dispatch describing their governor's stealth move as follows, quote, "Unlike the public relations ballyhoo that accompanies many executive actions, Governor McDonnell, an anti-abortion Republican, certified the regulations and had them posted to the Virginia Town Hall website without a public announcement." And he did this when? On the Friday between the Christmas and New Year's holidays. This has been an incredibly contentious and controversial policy issue in Virginia, led by Governor Ultrasound and his Attorney General, Ken Cuccinelli, both lifetime anti-abortion activists. The state's health board had initially tried to block these new regulations, but Cuccinelli and McDonnell aggressively pressured and threatened the board into reversing their decision. And now, with the governor signing these new regulations in the dead of night on the Friday between Christmas and New Year's with no public announcement, we are now on track for the Republicans in Virginia state government to have shut down most of the clinics in that state. And that's why he will never shake the nickname Governor Ultrasound. And that will not be handy if he ever tries to seek further political office after he is turfed out of the governorship this year. It was February of last year when Virginia Republicans got to work on what started out as a forced vaginal probe ultrasound bill. And for whatever reason, that bill in Virginia got a lot of national attention.
I have to ask you about this red-hot story that's gotten so much ink, so many women in particular fired up.
You backed an abortion bill initially that included a very invasive procedure as part of an ultrasound that the state would have required. And then you backed off of that. Were you wrong to support that initially, or did you simply back off because the political heat got turned up the way it did?
Governor, you've gone through this with the personhood debate and the ultrasound bill in the state of Virginia. If you look at your Facebook page right now, there's a feisty conversation going on there.
This was a bill, an abortion bill, that would have mandated that women get what's called a transvaginal ultrasound if they were getting an abortion.
When you were here last month, you were in favor of the transvaginal ultrasound.
As you were educating yourself on this bill, did you originally not realize that it might mandate an invasive procedure?
You have to realize this wasn't my bill.
During the entire wand forcibly inserted in your most private area experience, you still have complete and total control over what direction your head is turned. So just set your iPod to shuffle, flip through a copy of Vanity Fair, and try to ignore the fact that you're being handled like a human popsicle.
Now, don't get me wrong. I love transvaginal. It's my favorite airline. I got so many miles on transvaginal that I always get upgraded to lady business. Really?
That was what happened last year when Virginia Republicans tried to force vaginal probe ultrasounds on women seeking abortions. Everything up to and including Saturday Night Live. The thing is, there was something a little weird about all that attention, because the exact same policy had come up in a different state with an ambitious governor the year before, but that one got no national notice at all. In 2011, it was Texas, and Texas Governor Rick Perry, he held a big ceremonial signing event to usher in his state's forced vaginal probe ultrasound law. But in Texas in 2011, it was met with precisely no mainstream national outrage. Unlike Virginia, the Republicans who put that law forward were not forced to defend it on national TV. It didn't attract so much attention that it derailed all the other things they wanted to do and they wanted to be known for. It didn't get made fun of on Saturday Night Live. It did not attract a national political spotlight from people all over the country who were horrified by the idea of what they were doing, even though they did exactly the same thing as Virginia. In 2011, that did not happen. But in 2012, it did. And that outrage in 2012 had far-reaching consequences. Okay, Virginia first passed its first ultrasound bill on February 1st of last year. February 14th is when it started to get attention. Up until that point, after Texas's success the year before, after it had initially looked like Virginia was steaming right along with its own version of the Texas bill, these ultrasound laws were ready to go all across the country. And Republican-controlled states all across the country, the anti-abortion movement, had made sure these bills were poised to move. But once that attention on the Virginia law started to burn a hole through Bob McDonnell's vice presidential ambitions, once what Virginia was trying to do became a national story and a point of national political focus and ridicule, efforts to do the same thing in many of those other states just started to fall apart. By February 26th, less than 2 weeks after the uproar started over Virginia's bill, Alabama's governor, Robert Bentley, was asked about the very similar forced ultrasound bill pending in his state. The very next day after the governor was asked, on February 27th, the Republican sponsor of that bill in Alabama suddenly backed away from it, saying he was going to rewrite the bill to remove the vaginal probe requirement. That bill, vaginal probe or not, ended up going nowhere in Alabama. On March 1st, 16 days after the Virginia outcry started up, the Republican House leader in Pennsylvania started to back away from his state's forced ultrasound bill that was pending there, canceled debate on the measure, announced that the bill wouldn't be considered in the Pennsylvania House anytime soon. By March 21st, it was Republicans in Idaho who were getting so jumpy about their forced ultrasound bill that they canceled a hearing on the measure. 6 days later in Idaho, their forced ultrasound bill was officially dead when a House committee chairman said he wouldn't allow a hearing on the bill, and the anti-abortion activists who were behind it admitted defeat, said they planned to withdraw it altogether. So what happened in Virginia set off a round of national attention that spooked people from pursuing the same policies in all those other states. And while that is the story of ultrasound bills over the course of last year, it's also a bit of a microcosm for extreme anti-abortion policies of all kinds all over the country last year. It's one of the reasons why, after you saw this huge, unprecedented, historic spike in anti-abortion legislation in 2011, when you got to 2012, look, the number's lower. I mean, you still had a very high number, higher than any other year than 2011. But compared to the previous year, many fewer pieces of legislation were passed into law. These numbers are just out today from the Guttmacher Institute. And of course, it's not the only reason. These are multivariate things. But the folks at Guttmacher say that part of the drop between 2011 and 2012 for the anti-abortion measures was because of opposition. Because of the outrage, the furor, the pushback, the national ridicule, national attention and pressure that these Republican efforts attracted this past year in 2012, that they didn't attract in 2011. So what's 2013 going to be like? Is it going to be outrage or no outrage? Is the pushback against the Republican anti-abortion agenda last year, is that, forgive the pun, a reproducible phenomenon? Did this just happen because Democrats saw it as a way to reach women voters in election year? Is the opposition that helped drive down those numbers in 2012 and that ruined Bob McDonnell's 2012, does that opposition still exist? Will that opposition hold together to fight whatever new anti-abortion measures are on the horizon this year or that have already been snuck into law in Virginia by Bob McDonnell on the Friday between Christmas and New Year's? He's trying to avoid attention. Will it work? To the extent that the opposition has been fueled by national Democrats taking up this cause as their own in mainstream politics, do we have reason to believe that that is an every-year commitment from Democrats? Or was this a one-time deal linked to the election? Joining us now is Terry O'Neill. She's president of the National Organization for Women. Terry, it's good to have you here tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Rachel. It's great to be here.
Let me ask about what I just explained about the sort of furor in 2012, starting with the Bob McDonnell law there in Virginia, but it's one that ended up affecting a policy in a lot of different states. Do you see that causation the way that I do? Do you think that the national attention and furor changed what states were able to do on this issue?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what happened in 2012 were two things coming together at the same time. Number one, the effects of the 2010 election, when Tea Party extremists flooded into the United States Congress and also flooded into key swing states, Virginia, Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan. We saw this wave, this huge wave, as the graph that you put up there showed, of anti-women legislation and anti-abortion rights legislation. At the same time, you had a national election, a presidential election, and the Democrats clearly saw that they could get a lot of votes from a key voting bloc, over 50% of the voting public being women, and they pressed it for their own gain. But also, the Democrats pressed the issue because it is in fact where the Democrats are, and the Republican Party as a party has moved so far to the right, where women's access to reproductive health is concerned, that it was very much a legitimate issue for the elections. So it was both of those things: the Republicans going way extreme and being captured by really a radical fringe that represents virtually nobody in the country agrees with their anti-reproductive rights agenda in the Republican Party. So you had both going on, the Democrats wanting to win elections and the Republicans going off the rails.
The Democrats moved in 2012 from what had been sort of a private assurance to people in the pro-choice movement that the Democrats were on their side and the Democrats were a better place to sort of stake your political, put your political flag, as it were. Move from private assurance to publicly campaigning on it. You're saying, as you say, as a way, I think, of trying to lock up the women's vote. Is there a way for the pro-choice movement to try to make permanent that sort of overt public political Democratic support, or do you expect that to recede until the next election?
No, actually, I expect it to grow. At least I'm hoping that it will grow, and it's partly my job to make sure that it does grow. I think there's good reason to believe that it will grow, and really it's because of the enormous success that strategy by the Democrats proved in 2012. And that's number one. Number two, I think that there's a sort of, you can't really get the genie back in the bottle on this. In other words, suddenly the public's attention has been put on the extreme nature of Republican anti-reproductive rights agenda, and people are waking up and saying, whoa, 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 this is not what we want. The fact is that well over 80% of the American people, when polled, say that they think that even if abortion were to be a crime, for example, there should be an exception in the case of protecting women's health. But the radical fringe in control of the Republican Party is out there. Paul Ryan was on the floor of the House of Representatives not 6 months ago, railing about the fact that women routinely lie about their health just in order to get that abortion. That's not where the people of this country are. And I think that thanks to Governor Ultrasound McDonnell of Virginia, and thanks to Ken Cuccinelli, who wants to be the next Republican governor of Virginia, who is absolutely another Governor Ultrasound, I think people's attention has been sort of focused on this, and people are turned off by it. I think that if Democrats want to continue winning elections, they will continue to put this issue forward and be very open and transparent about it and say, you know, we don't see why women's health should be restricted. There's not a single aspect of men's health that gets restricted on ideological grounds. We're not going to do it to women.
I think your hypothesis there, bolstered by the fact that Governor McDonnell, Governor Ultrasound, saw fit to sign these regulations that are likely to shut down every clinic in the state in the dead of night with no public announcement, in a way that he hoped he wouldn't be held accountable for. Terry O'Neill, National Organization for Women President, thank you for being here tonight. It's nice to have you here, ma'am.
Thank you. It's great to see you.
All right. The great state of Alaska has a new neighbor, an unwanted, dirty, gassy new neighbor. Happy New Year, Last Frontier. That story's coming up.